without further ado, I'd like to welcome you, like I said, to Pivot Points. And I'd like to start off with a little anecdote, which is,
Okay.
man, I don't even remember what year it was, but um, a friend who was sort of my first drum teacher said to me one night, "Listen, man, you need to come with me. We're gonna go watch some jazz." And in my mind at that point, jazz was like foreplay, Spyro Gyra, George Benson.
Hmm.
That was jazz.
Yeah, jazz.
Incognito. You
Yeah,
know,
sure.
where I'm from, that's
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's
jazz,
jazz.
jazz. Yeah.
So, so he's like, "Yeah, we're going to the Armchair."
Okay.
I'm like, "What? The what?" So I'd never heard of this.
Right.
So we pull up there in Arms outside the Armchair Theater, as it was called back then,
Hmm.
and I have no idea what's going on. The place is packed, packed. There's people sitting on the floor, like in
Hmm.
front of there's not even really a stage. Like everything's just floor level, and I distinctly remember Mark's keyboard is set up close to that little side door, and he's
Yes.
standing out there smoking a cigar, and I'm looking at this drum kit. I'm like, wait a minute, why is somebody here with like a kid's drum kit? I'm like, look how small that bass drum is. So I'm like, are you are you sure about that? Like, I don't see any keyboards. I mean, I see one keyboard. I don't see any guitars. Like there's this big, like, acoustic double bass. Like I'm not sure what I'm in for. And you guys come up. Obviously, the band was Tribe, and
Yes.
you guys come up, and oh my goodness, I was just taken to a whole other place. Like I never experienced music like that, like in person. Like
Wow.
I didn't even listen to I maybe listened to a couple of recordings of like Buddy Rich. That
Right.
was the closest that I ever got to like listening to traditional jazz, really. Maybe a
Wow.
Miles Davis tune here and there, or Nina Simone. My baby just cares for me comes on TV, but that was something else. And
Wow.
right there, I was like, I want to play this kind of music.
Oh,
And
wow.
and a few years later, I'm like, I'm at DCT and I'm like, what? Wait, there's that guy. And there's the piano guy. Like it was crazy. And yeah, that was the beginning for me of like just learning about this music and being exposed to it and wanting to absorb it. And yeah, you were the guy. So I wanted to thank you
Wow.
for that experience, man.
Yeah, I'm almost in tears here when you're telling me, reminding me of this time. That was a very important time in my life, and also
Hmm.
to be able to inspire people such as yourself and many other people have come up to me about those tribe gigs,
Mm,
um, because that band was kind of formed because all of us had some compositions that we wanted to play, but we also wanted to play in a play the acoustic jazz
yeah.
in a modern way and without restrictions. Because at
Mm.
that time in Cape Town, there was obviously the what we call the jazz, you know, the,
Uh-huh.
the jazz. When we listen to it, I mean, dance music, the jazz dance music, the bands that you mentioned, Incognito, and all of those bands, and I love that. But that was the kind of the most common kind of
Mm.
music. And then there was like the Green Dolphin, but that was kind of more occupied with standards and more subtle kind
Yeah.
of drumming. And so
Yes.
I had just kind of graduated with my first degree at UCT, and I wanted to play music where I knew how the drums were supposed to be in jazz, because
Hmm.
I'd already been to New York and I'd already been to
Yeah.
some festivals, and so I knew how that music was supposed to sound,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so one of the main concerns was that I just couldn't be able to play that sound properly. And
Mm.
I'm glad you mentioned that the 18-inch. I remember that was an 18-inch pole
Yes.
export series.
Yes.
They used I managed because I couldn't find the proper 18-inch bass drum, and then what
Mm.
happened was I made a deal with the guy who rented the drums to the Cape Town Jazz Festival.
Okay.
What is his name? He passed away quite recently.
Was
Um,
he a poll representative?
no, he was just the guy that used to have backline.
Okay.
I'll remind you of the name again. But he
Sure.
was a sweet guy, and he said to me, "Cool, you can, there's no festival. When it's not festival, you can use the drums." And so,
Wow.
and so then, because I had previously had a Paul export series, which was 22-inch.
Yeah. Yeah.
The usual 22, 12, 13, 16. What
Hmm.
the standard kit that you buy at the store. And
Yes.
obviously before that, that was what was available. And
Right.
then eventually I
Yeah.
became hip to the 18-inch and what that represents and how
Mm.
that's supposed to sound. So anyway, then I remember looking for space to we were running around, me and Buddy Wells, the saxophone player in that band.
Hmm.
We were running around looking for a place for because Tribe had been rehearsing. We got
Oh,
together and
okay.
we'd been rehearsing all these tunes, and we just said, okay, let's rehearse the tunes
Yeah.
and we'll find a gig somewhere, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so and eventually we walked around, we're looking for places, we couldn't find a place. And I said, hey, buddy, there's this place called the Armchair Theater.
Mm.
I go there to watch manga movies on a Monday night.
Yes, Manga Mondays.
Manga Monday. So my friend was doing manga on a Monday. He eventually started a club called Assembly later on, but he was doing a lot of like little gigs and little special things. And so the mangas,
Mhm.
his name was Duncan, and so Duncan used to do that. And he said, "Hey, go talk to the Armchair. Maybe they would, because he loved jazz too, and he used to like book gigs of mine at random places."
Right.
So I went to the Armchair and I met Carl, who owned the Armchair Theater at that
Mhm.
point. And I said, hey, I have this quartet. All of the, I had to kind of oversell it, all of
Yeah.
the young, up and coming guys in the scene that's playing new progressive jazz or whatever. And we would like to do like a night here. And he
Yeah.
says, I have Thursdays. I said, okay, cool. Yeah. How many Thursdays can we do? He says, I have Thursdays open for the next year. And I said, okay. So, yes. Me and Buddy just said, yeah, sure, we'll do a year, no problem. And then it's like, yeah, we don't really have music in here. They never had music before. And
Right.
so we were like, okay, cool. How are we going to start? Thursday is, we told them, because the band was like, okay, cool. So we had rehearsals. We used to rehearse on Monday
Mhm.
and we used to rehearse on Wednesday every week
Wow.
at Charles's place, the bass player. So we were just like crazy about playing, the original music. And then, so that first Thursday, I remember I said to Carl, the owner, so what do you have? Yeah, he says, I have a PA. I said, yeah, microphones. Yeah, he says, no, they had nothing. They never had a band. So, and I said, do you have any lights? And then they said, no. I said, so at that time, there was like a kind of a multi-repair shop, kind of utility shop across the road from the Armchair.
Yes.
So I went there. I said, what you got? We're going to put on a gig, a music gig. He says,
Yeah.
oh, I have some lights. He had some lights, some stage lights. He had
Mhm.
4 of them. So I bought those and I got this. He had 3 microphones. I got those. And we had a couple of cables and we basically
Oh my
installed.
goodness.
And so we did the first gig on the Thursday, and then obviously, I mean, back then there wasn't Facebook or any social media. It was like,
Yeah.
I think it was 2000 around there, right?
Okay.
Around 2000, 2001, about
Yeah.
there, if I remember correctly. And then we got some people coming in off the street, just like looking in, like, what's happening here?
Mm,
And then somehow word of mouth spread, and by the third Thursday, their place was packed.
Wow.
And then people would just come, like almost like religiously, like
Yes.
some people would just come there and like they weren't even into jazz. They would just sit there and they would just lie on the couch, and some of them would just fall off to sleep.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
like I know, obviously they were smoking some, some of the holy, and then they would just zone out to this music, which they
Yeah.
thought was, because we would just play like extended solos, and we would go crazy. I was allowed to really play as
Yeah.
much as I wanted to. I could, take the dynamics anywhere, use that open sound. And besides the fact that my playing kind of grew in that space, I also managed to kind of provide people with the sound of what jazz could sound like in the proper
Yes.
setting. It wasn't just this background music,
Yeah.
and that was very important to us. So it was like Tribe was this composition band, but we also had players. And so by the end of that band, I mean, we don't. We might do a reunion now and again, But we had about 40 original tunes by memory.
Wow.
And that was the thing in that band, is that we said, we no charts. There's no
Okay.
charts.
I like
So
that.
we are only we had to play whatever tune we brought. It had to be by memory.
Mm.
And so what we did was we used to rehearse Monday and Wednesday. So
Mhm.
Wednesday would be what we're playing before now the Thursday
Yeah.
gig at the Armchair. That was our main thing.
Yeah.
And then Monday we would analyze
Mm.
where things went, well, where we could make some adjustments,
Yes.
or where things were not working, or and we would be pretty critical with each other. I mean, we became quite a family. There was a little bit of, sometimes we would fight with each other over differences of musical
Of course.
opinions, whatever.
Of
But we
course.
definitely had a sound and a respect for each other's, especially our music and what we wanted to do as musicians, as players, and everybody got featured for what they were. Like sometimes we would write the tunes for the players. So I would think about writing a song with Mark and Buddy and Charles in mind, where the limitations were stretched and where their voices would shine.
Right. Right.
So that was Tribe, and that kind of I guess that was almost like another school for me. Besides going to college and obviously having a lot of experience from playing with people, but that band was like my first like band, like in terms of like where I was being an original musician.
Right. Like I was excuse me. I was struck by the variety of people that were there. Like they were young student age people. There were people who looked like they were in their 50s and their 60s. There were people that looked like they were burnt out hippies. There were people that looked like they were trendy yuppies. Like it was just everything, like in some songs there'd be people just dancing to whatever time signature they heard in their heads. There were some people that were just sitting there with their legs crossed and like rocking back and forth. Like it was just all sorts of responses, and like you said, like the thing that struck me was like, this isn't dinner music. Like this isn't, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I never, like I said, I never experienced jazz like this, and like the forcefulness, and then also being able to pull it back, and like the sensitive, intimate moments, and then right back up to that powerful sound. Like it was a roller coaster, and so that definitely influenced, like I said, influenced me to be like, oh, this jazz thing is not just what I thought it was. There's some other side to this that I really want to get to know. So
Nice.
You mentioned that you had played in other projects before, and I know it's a pretty long list, but maybe you could mention a few notable people that you've played with, and perhaps a couple of notable stories, anecdotes that changed your perception, that were pivot points, if you will, in your development as a creative musician.
Yeah, I think I would probably have to go right back to when the person that kind of got me into the instrument, and that's a drummer from East London. Unfortunately, he's late now. His name was Reese Timothy.
Okay.
And he was like the top drummer in the city where I'm from East London. Right. And lucky for me, he was dating my auntie, right? Who was about 5 years older than me. So not much. And we still live in my family. Through certain circumstances, we all lived in the same house. My grandparents, you know how it is with growing up like that. So we're all together, in this house, and there's my mother and there's my granny, and then there's my auntie's also there, but she's basically my age. We have to share everything, and so. Anyway, also including a car, like, we have like one car. My granny's kind of going to go pick up my auntie to go pick up her from her boyfriend's house. It's time for her to come home. She can't stay over at the house, So I remember I was about standard 4, standard 5. So I was about 10 years old. And then my granny said to me, go knock on the door, go ring on the doorbell, go pick up your aunt. And so I was like, okay, cool. So I remember coming closer to the house, right? And there was some music playing. It was, I can tell you exactly what the song was. It was Georgie Porgy by Toto.
Oh,
You know that track?
yes,
Right?
yes, yes,
The
yes.
killer. It's a kid, Jeff Picaro, the man.
Say no
So,
more.
so I'm like, but I mean, obviously didn't know what that was at the time. I'm like, okay, so, wow, this is amazing music. And then the drums are so loud. They're like in up front. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, this is, what is this? So I obviously like ring the doorbell and the gate opens. The auntie, his mom, or his grandmother opens the door. He also lived with his grandmother, whatever. And the house had like a basement, like a downstairs thing.
Oh,
And I didn't even say hello to the. And I was so drawn to the sound. I ran into the house and ran down to go looking for the sound. And then I remember opening the door. It was obviously where the drums were coming from. And he had this. Reese had this music with this big speakers behind the drums, like old school back in the days. He had a Pearl World Series.
Oh, that's what my first teacher had too.
Yeah, the World Series, man. That was the kit for everybody. It had a 10, 12. He had a 10, 12, 13, and then 14, 16 floor. And then he had a 22, and then the 3 Sabian big ass cymbals and the hi-hat, and he was playing along with it like perfectly.
Yes,
Reese was one of those guys that would play the song. You would remember the songs perfectly, like all of the arrangements, all of the accents, all of the stuff. He was perfect precision in that way. Wow. And he was playing along with it, and I just looked at this thing. Just him going crazy, him going on this tune. I was just like mesmerized. I'd almost like, I would never forget it. It was like, I can still remember it so clearly. I fell in love with this thing. It was almost like I'm 10, so I never really knew what love was in that way. But then I knew what I have to have this. I have to go and get it. It's So I remember coming up to him. Obviously, a little kid, he's busy playing, and I like tap him on the shoulder. Obviously he's like, whoa, what's going on? And I say, I just looked at him and I said, show me.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay. And then he sees the track off, and then he showed me the first beat. The normal, like the, the Billie Jean, I guess, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, cool, thanks. And I'm coming back. And so then I went to the home, I went to the toilet, and I kind of worked it. It was the only quiet place in the house was the toilet. And then I worked it out. I remember, okay, cool, 1 and 2 and whatever. And I was like, okay, cool. And then from then on, I just banged everything. I could get my hands on the pots and the pans and this and and everything. It was just, I just became obsessed with it. I don't know. And then obviously my grandmother was I was driving her nuts because she couldn't find a biryani pot because it was under my bed or something like that. It was just like, and I always used to say, when we picking up my aunt, because I just want to go.
Then you can go back.
So anyway, so that was when the beginning of it all. That was my big, and then so he was into like all of that kind of music, like the dance jazz music. But his dad, his father, was into jazz, like more swing, traditional
kind of thing.
So I remember one day I went to go visit him again, and all of a sudden the kit had been stripped down. And then I was like, whoa. And he was like, this one tom, one floor tom, and 2 cymbals. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. It's like, he says, no, this is the original kind of jazz.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then he gave me the CD to go take home and listen to, which was with Kenwood Denard.
Oh.
And I was like, I think it was, they played Impressions and stuff. Who was the Jordan? Is that Stanley Jordan? The guitar player.
Yeah, Stanley Jordan.
Stanley Jordan came with Dan. I don't know who the bass player was, but they would play some heavy stuff. And I was like, "Whoa, what is this now?"
Right.
And then so I remember trying to work this thing out. Like, I thought, I've been playing all the other beats. Yeah. And I thought, like, now this drummer plays all of this complicated stuff. Like every bar, he knows. Like when he play, I thought when he plays it again at the next concert, he plays all those notes.
Yeah,
I didn't understand improvisation just yet. So I worked out every. I mean, I didn't actually play every bar. I mean, I gave up after like 2 or 3 bars, and I just started whacking along with it. But at least I was just playing along with that sound.
Yes.
And then eventually, I played with I was playing like percussion with the local orchestra, did some snare drum parts, and then I met Alan Webster.
Oh, right.
He came up to me. I was about 13, 14. Yeah. And then he came up to me and says, "Oh, you sound very talented. I've seen you play with this other thing." He says, "Do you know jazz?" I said, yeah, I know jazz. Because I thought, okay, you know jazz. I didn't understand any meant. Can I play jazz? I said, yeah, I'm working on jazz kind of thing. He says, "Oh, cool. Well, Alan he's like, okay, cool. Come visit me." So he said, "Okay, this is jazz," and then he gave me John Coltrane Blue Train.
Oh, wow.
And then that was when it really. And then he said. And then I listened. He said, "Yeah, listen to the CD." And so I went in and listened to it. I was like, "Oh, okay, this is a little bit less complicated." I mean, it's fully Joe Jones, and all of that, and Paul Chambers and those guys, and I mean, that's one of the best records. And so I was like, "Oh, okay." And he said to me, "Don't worry, they're not playing the same thing. They're playing there's the groove." And he explained to me how improvisation worked. And so I said, "Oh, okay, cool, got it." So then I listened to all of the tracks and I kind of understood. I was just playing along with Philly Joe. I never like a teacher that was showing me, like Reese wasn't playing that. I was learning all of the fusion, Jeff Picardo stuff from him, and then I was learning the jazz stuff from just listening to the albums. And then I was like, "Hey, Alan, you got another record." And then it was like, he would give me another album, maybe Modern Jazz Quartet, or then he said he had another record of maybe like, what is the other one? Miles Davis, like Milestones, and there was another seminal one. Oh, he liked Dexter Gordon and all of that. So then I was like, so it was all the 60s stuff.
Yes.
Stan Getz, he was a huge Stan Getz fan.
Oh, wow.
So eventually I was listening to all of these things and understanding standards.
Okay.
So I was really getting into the idea of standards. And I was like, okay, cool, this is standards. I learned like Night in Tunisia. And then obviously at that point I was getting, because I was lucky enough, apartheid just ended, right? So when I was, when I was in Standard 5, up to from 0 to Standard 5, I went to a Catholic school where they kind of had a kind of a workaround where everybody could go to the school, no matter what color. Because the Catholics have their own rules, I guess, and so there was like, and then up until 1992, that was when I was in Standard 5, and then 92, I went to high school, but it wasn't quite. Mandela was already released, and things were changing. They had like a slow change, and so at that particular point when I had to go to high school, there was. These 3 very, very prestigious schools, so to speak, in East London. That was the best schools. And one was like an all-boys school called Salburn College. Another one was Hudson Park. Another one was Stirling, where Alan was. But Stirling they had a very tiny music department, right? Okay. Alan was just starting it. And I was like, nah, I'm not going. There was like, and Hudson was the school that had the most famous. They were famous for their concert band, and they had a big band at the school. And because they had a teacher who came here from England, and him and his wife did this amazing job of this music department. I mean, like it was incredible. And then, so then that was like. I chose that school because I was lucky. I was accepted at all 3. They were basically looking for people of color.
Right.
And they needed some representation. And I chose the school with the best drum set. Actually, I went to the music department and I was like, okay, that's the best drum set. I'm choosing this school. And then I remember like my family was kind of like, no, you have to go to the all boys school. That's the best, most prestigious school. They were like, they have all the Springboks from the rugby. Like they all come from like they came from that school,
Yeah.
and a lot of the Proteas
cricket.
from the cricket team, they're all from Selborne. If it was East London, that was Selborne, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, nah, I'm going to play the drums. So I went to Hudson, and then I remember the first day of school started at 6. I went straight, and I remember there was only 10 students out of 1,000 that was not white. So it was the beginning. It was the first year they had. So it was quite a culture shock for me in a way. But also I was like, I was pretty brave. And then I went straight to the music department and I was like, okay. I told the guy, hey, I can play drums.
Yeah.
And so the guy said, you can show me. And so I said, I went and I freaking went nuts on the instrument. Right. And then he was like, okay, cool, sign me up. Yes, their lessons. And there's like, oh, cool, like I'm in. And so now I'm gonna think. I said to my mother, listen, I'm starting to play the drums officially at school. I took it up as an instrument. She was like, okay. And I said, I need an instrument. She was like, well, we can't afford an instrument. We didn't have really any place for it. But like, I need to go get it myself. Yeah. And so I ended up going to the school. Then in the storeroom, they had this old piece of nonsense, whatever, the bass drum, and it was another thing, and I kind of basically made a kit out of it.
Right.
The thing that had the hi-hat pedal never worked properly. I figured out how to fix it. I had I don't know what cymbal it was. It was all put together. It was terrible. No bottom skins. Ooh. And then but it was a thing to bash on,
yes.
and the pedal that was like squeaking louder than the bass drum. But it was my instrument. I could go and whack it all day,
Yes.
And so that was basically the school. The beginnings of and I just would play in the school band. I would play in the concert band, and I would obviously learn how to read and stuff there. The teacher there wasn't a drummer, but he understood drums in the technical side of the classical side. So he taught me all of the readings and the snare drum stuff. He could do that, and then I would learn from Reese, and I would learn from Alan. And so I would just be as a sponge as a little kid.
Yes.
And then eventually what happened was in Matric, I was going to, drums was just a passion. I always wanted to study it, but I didn't know what the possibilities were, right? And so I remember there was the first National Youth Jazz Festival. Yeah, the first youth one. And just before that, Alan said I was playing in Alan's band already now.
Oh, wow.
Nice. So I'd started playing with his band when I was about 15, and we did our first concert. I can tell you about that. It's a freaking crazy concert. It changed my life, basically. But should I tell you about it first? That concert?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, cool. So basically, we're playing at the Hogsback Jazz Festival. And Alan's band, he had a quintet. His wife was playing piano. He had an Israeli double bass player, France, I think his name was, and a guitarist from Australia called Jim Chapin. And so an international band. And I was playing drums, but I was about 15. And I borrowed my friend Reese's drums because my drums were not capable of playing a gig with. So he was very kind. He let me use the pole. And I obviously used the jazz setting because that's what I was used to. And so we played a whole bunch of standards and in certain ways, and it was quite cool. It was quite open, and these guys were very, very sweet. They showed me all of the ropes, and and I remember this concert was also in the Hogsback Hotel where it was so full. It was like the armchair thing. That's why I kind of liked that armchair, because it reminded me of my first gig where it was so full I could touch the person's head because that was next to the hi-hat stand. With my head, I was like, somebody was sitting there, and I could say, "Hey, what's going on?" So the whole place was like it's full, full. You can't swing a cat in there. You know what I mean? So basically, the last tune we played was "Summertime," but we did it in kind of a up-tempo-ish way, a double time, but the melody half. And then Alan just said, "Yo, take an open solo. Just go." You
Oh
can, you don't have to
wow.
worry, but you just take a solo. Just go. I know what you can do. And then I
Yes.
played the solo, bolted, and did my thing, and I came out okay. Came out. I mean, I was in my head. It came out amazing. I was really everything was working out, which is kind of rare because that never happens really when you're performing. But somehow I was back in my practice room. There was nobody there, and I
Mm.
just got and it somehow everybody somehow listened to the thing, and we all came in together at the
Wow.
climax of the solo. And
Wow.
I never forget it. Everybody in the room got up and stood up and they clapped.
Oh my goodness.
And that was like I was like, oh my God. I mean, that really, it was like crazy. I couldn't
Right.
believe that happened. I never forget the thing that I did to these people through the
Mm.
instrument. That was like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh gosh, I can do this. This is what
Yes.
happens, right? And
Right.
it was like, what? And then at the end of that, Alan gave me a check, right? Because I mean, I had never really gotten like a lot of money, and then he got me but it was like 375 rand, right?
Whoa.
That is like 1994 around there. It's a lot of
That's
money.
a lot of money for a kid.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
money,
Okay,
period, actually.
yeah. I'm like, yo, okay, you can get money for this too. I remember putting that money in my bank account. I was thinking, okay, look, I'm a professional.
Uh,
Okay,
uh,
and then my mother was so proud. Now I could buy my own school clothes and
oh,
stuff.
that's great.
So I could actually also support the family a little bit with the money.
Mm-hmm.
So that was
Mm-hmm.
like, why this thing can actually give you some bucks.
Yeah.
But then it wasn't always the case. But then I
Right.
also ended up playing in a swing band
Okay.
called Eldon Swing Band, and so that band actually got my standards up there. That they only played standards, and that would
Okay.
be like a function gig. They would play on the weekends, and I would
Mhm.
get a lot of pay, like and then I would be able to sustain myself as a
That's
person.
great. Yeah.
So that was amazing, and then the thing changed in 1996 in Matric. Okay, moving forward to 96
If I
Matric.
can just interject real quick.
Yeah.
So for those who might not know, in South Africa, we had a different grading system for school. So nowadays we also do grades 1 to 12, but back in the day, kind of based on the British system, it used to be substandard A, substandard B for grades 1 and 2, and then you'd start standard 1 at grade 3. And then grade 12, which would be standard 10, got called matric. So when you hear those terms, just know that they're interchangeable, and they before we switched to like the grade system. So standard 3 would be, standard 1 would be
Grade 3.
grade 3, and then matric would be standard 10 or grade 12. I just wanted to clear that up, so in case people were like, oh, what's a standard, what's a matric?
Right. Actually, but I can also say like grade 12, basically the end of high school, my final year of high school.
Yeah.
Okay, so and then Alan encouraged me to go to the first National Youth Festival, and that was not organized by Alan, but it was organized by another guy who was actually at Rhodes University or at the DSG school. Anyway, long story short is the UCT professors were there also teaching. So it was Mike Campbell, Andrew Lilly, Daniel Andrews, and Kevin Gibson. So as a young person, obviously I had finally seen like now there's a university level of this music. I was thinking about studying architecture because music was like my another subject. I was doing like maths and science and technical drawings and all of those kind of subjects to kind of go to architect school. And then I was like, wow, okay, university and Kevin Gibson and this amazing level of drummers. It's a completely new level.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, okay. Mike Skipper was the guy that was the previous director of the festival.
Okay.
So Aaron was just there, like guiding some people. He took me there and a few other VU students, and so and we were all enjoying these concerts in that small room with all of these professors and students and stuff. And then the big concert was the UCT professors. So Kevin Gibson, Mike Campbell, Andrew Lilly, and Daryl.
Daryl Andrews.
That was the main concert, so we were all excited waiting there. And I remember I was flirting with this girl, Vicky. I was okay, cool. I was into her, and I was sitting next to her. I was like, okay, cool, waiting for the concert. And I was thinking, okay, cool. After the gig, we're gonna go and kiss by the tree or something. I was like, okay, cool. That's my move. It'll be like a. And then what happened? There was the concert didn't start, and I was like, "Ish, what's going on?" So, 20 minutes later, there's no concert, and I thought, the thing's cancelled. So whatever. So I was walking out just to get some fresh air, whatever. And I said, maybe it's my chance to go.
Go to the tree.
Go to the tree there, whatever. And then I walk out, and Alan looks at me, grabs me. He says, "Yo, come here." I didn't say yo. It's not Alan's house. He says, "Come here. Leave Vicky alone." And I thought I was in trouble because now maybe I thought he was like seeing my move. But he says, they said, "They need you. There's no drummer." Kevin Gibson went AWOL, right? And so I was like,
what?
Really? I was like, okay. So I go to the backstage, and there's Daryl there, hello, and Mike and Andrew Lilly. They're kind of looking a little bit annoyed. And they said, well, this guy can play. And so they see him, a guy in grade 12. They're like, oh, man. I could see their faces, and I was like, okay, cool. I said, what are you guys playing? And they said, they ran through a list of standards. And I said, yeah, sure, I know all of them. And they were like,
wow.
Okay. And then we played the gig. And slowly, as the gig was going, they kind of started turning and looking at me, going like, hey, wait a minute. That sounds okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I was very nervous.
Of course.
I didn't play as good as I played in that Hogsback gig, but I played as good as I can play. Yes. And they were smiling at the end of it, and they were happy, and everybody was happy. And so then I remember Mike Campbell coming up to me afterwards and said, "Hey, well done. You did well. Thank you for saving the gig." And I was like, "Yeah, wow, it was such a honor to play with you guys. You guys are like amazing, blah, blah, blah. I've never played with such musicians at that level." And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "No, well, after you finish school." I said, "Nah, I was going to go study architecture."
Yeah.
And he said to me, "Would you ever consider studying music?" I said, "Oh man, that would be." But I didn't study music as a subject at school, so I have to work. I mean, I didn't even know it was a possibility.
Yeah.
And he says, "Oh, okay." He says, "Give me your number and your address," because there was no email.
There's no email. Yeah.
There wasn't even
not yet,
for mortals,
Right.
yet. And so what happened was 2 weeks later, I got a big envelope in the mail saying, "Congratulations, you accepted at UCT."
Oh my goodness.
And so that's how I ended up going to UCT.
That's incredible, Kesivan.
Yeah, and so I was like, okay, I told my mother, "Yo, I'm going to Cape Town." And I was just like, really? I was like, everybody was just going crazy. Now I'm going to study at UCT. I was like, can you believe it? And then when I got to UCT, everybody kind of knew who I was. Kind of, that's the guy they were talking about from the thing. And I said, oh shit, okay. So what happened was, Sir Lilo Salota. So Lilo Salota says to me, "Hey, I have a gig for you." And I said, "Okay, well, when's the gig?" It's my first day. I think Daryl was telling me, this is the guy that I was telling you about at the schools festival. Oh, great, we need a drummer. I said, okay, the gig's on Wednesday afternoon. I said, okay, cool. So I'll get to the school on Monday. The gig's on Wednesday. Okay, cool, I'll do it. Don't worry.
Oh my
we have a rehearsal. We're playing all the stuff, whatever. Sylvester Massignani was playing piano. Daryl actually doubled on bass. And so we play and we're really going for it. And I remember I got to the thing. You know what the gig was? The gig was the performance class, the first performance class of the UCT. I'd never been to performance class before. I thought there was just a gig. So I'm there and I said, geez, the whole university is here. What's going on? I mean, and then, after that, it was curtains. I mean, that was my kind of.
That's the coolest origin story I've ever heard.
The what? Actually, when there's a middle part actually. So the six
Mhm.
months before I went to Cape Town, miraculously, Hotep Kaleta decides to move to my hometown.
Oh my hat.
He just
Uh,
came back from America.
so for those who don't know, Hotep Idris Kaleta was a piano player who was born in Cape Town,
Mm.
went into exile in the US and played around New York and other places. And then post 1994, when things started changing in South Africa, there were a lot of people that started coming back, particularly people in the arts community who were part of arts activism overseas. And Hotep Idris Kaleta was one of those people. Wow, Kesivan, please go ahead.
Yeah, so Hotep heard about me, and he said he had a trio gig to introduce him to the city,
Mm.
right? So because now he's moved down to, and he was going to take over the University of Port Air. So
Oh,
so that's
wow.
how that kind of he started that whole jazz school there, and then Lulama Gaulana was playing bass at that time. So
Mhm.
there was the trio, and if I remember correctly, um, I was writing my final matric exams, final grade 12 exams or
Right.
whatever. And I remember I had to make sure I got it, I nailed it,
Yes.
because if I didn't get that right, I wouldn't get an exemption
Intensity.
to go study at UCT. So this was like a very important exam, and it was the
Yes.
last day of the exams, which I remember it was creative writing was the final exam, and then I had to go straight to rehearsal
Wow.
with Hotep. And so I had to go there with my school clothes. And usually when everybody takes their school clothes off, they have a big party on the
Yeah.
beach, whatever.
Yeah.
And I had to go and rehearse with Hotep, which I thought was much cooler, to be honest with you.
I agree.
And and then he taught me all of these tunes. We went through all of his repertoire. He showed me, and then Hotep was so giving. The whole weekend, he just said, "Come hang with me." And then I went there, and he showed me these videos of Jackie McLean and him playing together with Renee, and then Renee McLean, and then he showed me all the Art Blakey stuff and the record that he did with Alvin Jones, and I remember him saying, "You know what, this was the biggest encouragement." Actually, he said, "You have the ability to become a world class musician, drummer from South Africa. You have that potential." And he says, "I'm happy we play together. I get to know you. I will hook you up when you get to Cape Town." And also, so he also then hooked me up with Renee McLean. And so by the time I got to UCT, I was playing with all those guys. There was Salilo, with Renee.
Oh my
and so
goodness.
all of these doors just opened up so naturally.
Yes.
I would say I felt like the luckiest person on earth, particularly coming from my background where there was no chance for my family to kind of pay for this thing.
Right.
I had to kind of usually think about a career that would give sustainable money, And so like now becoming a jazz musician was also a little bit disappointing, for my family. My mother said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I said, "Don't worry.
Right.
It seems like it seems like a calling. I got to ride this wave. I got to see how far this can take me."
Yeah.
And then I would say, so then that was the big inspiration, because Hotep opened me up to the kind of more modern bebop, hard hitting thing, from the drums, and from that to the whole tradition, like the whole Alvin Jones, the whole what do you call it? Tony Williams, that kind of style of like unapologetic jazz drumming,
Right.
where it's got and I was like, wow, okay, this is my vibe, right? That's the thing. That's what I wanted to get. Somehow it just resonated with me. That's the thing. And it's like I guess you know how it is when you hear that music, you go, all right, that's hip.
Yes.
It's hip. I don't know why it's hip. I'm gonna figure out why it's hip, but I know it's cool. Right. And I want that. And so that's where I was kind of heading. That was my whole mentality, was that thing and that sound. And I slowly was really developing that. And then at the same time, Salilo was the guy that was helping me understand the South African musicians. Right. He would actually, like, we were very close.
Okay.
I used to look after his kids sometimes, and then Judith and myself and Salalo, Sylvester Mazzaniani, and what's the bass player's name? I'll get.
Musa
I'll come back.
Manzini?
Musa Manzini. That's exactly the best player. We used to play in a band together to get money for functions. That was the
Wow.
function band. Yeah, we got
Okay.
a lot of money.
I just got to interject here. Kesivan was just dropping some serious names there. So there was a generation of South African musicians who, you know, grew up under apartheid and had very few opportunities if they didn't go overseas. But then post-apartheid, there was a new wave that came about. And it kind of all centered around the University of Cape Town. So Sylvester Mazzaniani is a piano player who's amazing. Salila Salata is a guitar player who is amazing. Musa Manzini is a bass player who is amazing. Judith Sapuma is an artist who is amazing. All of them went on to be bona fide South African music legends in their own right. And this guy played in a band with all of them at the same time. That is just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, look, then we were all at college together, right? So they hadn't become famous yet, but it was obvious. I mean,
yes.
it was obvious. They were in fourth year. I was in first year, and
wow.
we were making some money, right? To kind of live, but also like we were all bound to the big band, so it was kind of touch and go, you know, the UCD big band, you know, the kind of politics, whatever. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that like, so Lilo was very kind to me. Like we would really we would eat together. If we were struggling, we would put our money together to buy dinner and everything. And it was very, 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 very sweet community of musicians looking after each other. And then what happened was he would give me the South African music. Like he would say, like, "Yo, check out this guy. He's my good friend." I was like, "Who's this guy?" He says, "Moses Molalekwa." I was like, "Whoa." So I listened to his music and said, wow, it's so African. And that's the thing, but it still has the jazz sensibility.
Yes.
And then obviously his music, his original music, I mean, there was also like that whole influence there. Then I would get into people like Zimwawana and all of that stuff. And he really opened my head into that, to maintain the South African style, the African style. He says, that's going to actually set you apart from just the bebop.
Yes.
And the harp, obviously, where you come from is very important to understand that music. And I said, okay, cool. And then at the same time, just besides what they were telling me, I had heard a piano player called Becky Mzaleku.
Oh.
And so this is, I got to tell you this, you're going to love this story.
Let me just take a sip before you start.
Yeah, take a sip. I'll take a sip too. So when I was about in standard 9 or grade 11, grade 12, around there, we used to have this program on TV called JPS Jazz Studio.
Yes, I remember that.
You remember that? That was like my favorite jazz. I mean, it's the only jazz program. They played all of these jazz gigs.
The guy with the big beard. I forget what his name is.
We'll get. I'll remember it. He played baritone.
Yes.
So that cat. He had this. He presented this whole thing and he curated it, and it was actually quite serious.
Yeah.
They played all like very serious music, like. So the one gig was Becky Mzaleku. He had played at this festival, and they recorded it. And so it was with Marvin Smith on the drums. You know, Michael Bowie on bass, and Eddie Parker on flute, and obviously Becky on piano. They were playing his tunes. And so I watched this concert on the TV, and thank God I recorded it, right? And I listened to this gig. I just like, this is it. That's it. That's the music. Becky, this Becky guy. No, it's a South African guy. Cool. And so I said, oh, this drummer, Marvin Smith. Oh, maybe he's from Joburg. I might get some lessons. Right? I don't know.
Right.
This drum is so fluid. I need to
Yeah.
learn how he does this. I mean, it must be a Joburg drummer. You
Right.
know, eventually I figured out who Marvin Smitty Smith was. But at that time, he was playing those South African grooves and all of that. I thought it
Right.
was.
You must be from here. Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed that he was. I had to go. Oh no, I have to go all the way to the States to get that lessons. But anyway, but I obviously became such a Becky fan that I got all the albums, and I would just learn the songs.
Yeah.
I was just learning because that was the closest to what also everybody was talking about mixing the jazz tradition from America with the jazz tradition or the music tradition from South Africa or
Yes.
Southern Africa. And Becky had done it in a way that was very unique. I mean, Moses did it, and Abdullah had done it. Abdullah Ibrahim and all these people have done it. Yuma Sakela, but Becky did it in a way that was quite another level because of his proficiency with the jazz, as well as his understanding of universal African music in a way, if you would say, you know. And so I was like, this is the guy because he did it all. And so I was like, I'm playing his music. Along with it, that was all I was. I was practicing all of the music a lot. It was my side project. And then in 1999, so that was my third year at UCT. I went to the Grahamstown Festival, to play with the UCT band. We did a concert, and it was amazing. And I remember the back then the youth big band was the main concert. It was a small festival, so that was the big thing, and it was like totally packed. And also Mike Campbell came in, opened solo, and I freaking went. And that band actually ended up going to New York.
Yes.
That
So
was year.
with Abigail Peterson and
and Notuzelo Poane.
There we go.
She was, and so a whole bunch of us were in this band, and they were so lucky. Anyway, even more lucky was one of Becky's friends was at the gig.
Wow.
And they came up to me and said, "Wow, man, that was unbelievable. I'm going to tell Becky Seleku about you." I was like, "Oh, are you kidding?" I was like, "Yeah, please. He's my hero. I've been studying his music now for 3-4 years now. But yeah, just tell him there's a guy that loves his music." And so, and so about a few weeks later, I get a phone call, and it's just like, "Hello, it's this Kesivan Naidoo." And I'm like, "Yes." He says, "This is Becky Seleku."
No way.
The piano.
No way.
And I'm like, "Yeah, I know who you are." He explains to me he's the piano player. So I'm like, "Mr. Mseleku, what can I do for you?" He says, "Oh, I have a concert in 2 weeks' time in Bloemfontein at the city at the concert hall there. Andre Huguenot concert hall, I remember." He says, are you available?" I was like, "Yes." I actually wasn't available, but I said, "Yeah, I'm available. Sure." And I was jumping up and down on my couch to the head, and then I actually broke the couch because my leg was through there. So I'm trying not to like say and at the same time trying to be like all cool on the phone. Just get to Joburg. We're going to rehearse in Johannesburg. And then we do the concert. I said, "Sure. When you need me to be there?" He says, "Can you come on Thursday?" I said, "Yeah, sure." I'm just like, okay. I'm saying yes to everything, right? And I'm just like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." So I kind of like shaking because this is like a big moment in my life.
Wow.
And so I just found out, and I'm thinking, okay, firstly, I got to get out of the other gig.
Yes.
Now, the other gig was this kind of theater production. And there was like quite a thing, and we hadn't started rehearsing it, but we were about to, and it was it was paying well. It was paying much better than Becky was going to pay, but and it was like a longer thing, and it was like, and I was like, and so I had loaned some money from my uncle to buy a bus ticket from Cape Town to Johannesburg, and I'm on the basic of the bus, and I phoned the theater guy. I said, "Listen, I'm not going to do this gig. I can't." Becky Seleku called. I just got like, "Who's Becky Seleku?" I'm like, I'm sorry, but this is such an important thing. I just had to tell you, I have another person that can tip. He's a great drummer. Kevin Gibson is his name. He's like better than I am. You can. He agreed, and she was like, he was like, "You will never ever play in Cape Town again."
Oh,
I was
wow.
like, okay, whatever. I'm gonna go. And so
Serious.
I put the phone down and I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna go play with Bekim Seleku. And then we did this rehearsal in Yeovil.
Mhm.
It's kind of like a rough-ish area at the time, but it was cool. I mean, the guy that used to play in Mango Groove, who was then later on in Fleshy Ground, the drummer, he had a studio where you could rehearse there.
Okay.
And
Peter
then
Cohen?
so Peter Cohen, yeah,
Okay.
Peter Cohen. So he actually remembers it because we were rehearsing like maniacs, and
Wow.
so I met. We went to the gate, and Becky opens the gate, and I never forget. He just comes and he hugs me.
Oh,
He
oh
hugs me, and I'm
man.
like, wow. This is about 8 o'clock at night, so it's kind of dark. My
Yeah.
uncle's like, are you sure you're coming here? I said, yeah, you can go now, go. Leave me alone, kind of thing. So Becky's holding me, and I'm holding Becky, and we're hugging for quite a while, actually. I'm like, wow, this is a long hug. And then Becky says to me, says, I know this is going to be the beginning of a great friendship.
Oh man.
I'm starting to cry
Wow, wow,
there.
wow, 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 wow.
And I'm like, okay, cool. I said, Becky, I'm here to learn. Let's read it. And
Yeah.
so I said to him, so how come you booking me on the last minute? So, I mean, uh, he just said Kevin, that's why Kevin was free, because Kevin had the gig, but Becky didn't like the feel.
Okay.
He said he wanted some other feel. And he
Okay.
said, and he believed I had it. And so I said, cool, I'm going to try my best,
Mm.
give my best shot. So we used to rehearse every night for about a week from about 8 o'clock at night until about 4 or 5 in the morning. Every day. Like basically the cats would basically be falling off to sleep in the
Yeah.
rehearsal. Like all
Oh
of a
my
sudden,
goodness.
like you just like, oh, what's happening? There's Herbie Twaeli sleeping on the floor because he can't stay awake anymore.
Oh my goodness. You know, I actually heard anecdotal stories from I want to say Mongezi Konjwa, piano
Yeah.
player, also from
Uh-huh.
Joburg, that when Becky was younger, playing in cover bands, when the cover band gig was over, he would then go sit at the piano and just practice standards until the
Uh-huh.
next morning when they came to open up. Like he would pay the security guards and say, "Yeah, lock the doors, put the chains on. I'm not leaving." And then the next
Yeah.
morning they'd have to be like, "Hey, you need to get out. We need to clean for today." And that
Yeah,
was just his
exactly.
thing. Like midnight rehearsals were always his jam.
Yeah,
From what I've heard.
he loved playing. I mean, I wish those rehearsals were recorded because
Mm,
that's what was quite amazing. Like it was quite funny because sometimes I played music of Becky's with other people,
yeah.
right? And then it was so weird when I was playing it with Becky. He played, and that was Becky playing the solos. I was like, wow, this piano player sounds just like Becky. I would have to remind myself every now and again. But you close your eyes, you play, wow, this piano player sounds like, oh, it's Becky.
It's
Right. and so we were hanging out for 2 weeks every day. It was almost like Becky became my new best friend.
Wow.
The Matrix had just come out. The first Matrix, and so we watched that like almost every second day. We watched it like 4 or 5 times. He loved it because it reminded him of Buddhism, and
Right.
so we were like, we were watching the Matrix during the day, and then playing. And he was very
Wow.
sensitive. He could listen and play anything. Like sometimes he played stuff that sounded like Mozart, right? And I said,
Wow.
"Wow, did you learn Mozart?" And he said, "No, but this is what Mozart sounds like." And he would play it, and you would swear it was a Mozart. He says, and this is what Bach sounds like. And then he would play the stuff, and I was like, "Wow, that's
Wow.
because I'd known all that music from college and stuff, so I was familiar with it." He said, "No, you can't understand. You can't read the music, but he
Yes.
understands how they
understood it.
sound."
Mm.
And I was like, "Wow, this is like ridiculous." And then then from then on, he said, "Okay, you my first call, drummer."
Wow.
And that was it. So we did a lot of gigs, but then unfortunately, what happened was there was for the recording, he booked me in January, but then the recording was in December for his South African album. So he was, and I said, "Yeah, cool."
Was that Home at Last?
Almost last year. And
Okay.
we've been listening and playing that music forever. And then eventually, like when December came, I was like, I found Becky. I said, "Yo, what happened to the recording?"
Mm.
He said, "What you talking about?" The owner of the record label
Mhm.
said I wasn't available because he didn't want to pay for my flight from Cape Town. The guy that was from Sheer Sound, what is his name? Anyway, he was terrible. And like Becky was disappointed. I was disappointed. We were
Oh
all
my!
kind of like, and he kind
You're
of snide me out
absolutely
of that.
kidding.
Yeah, no, that really happened. You
I
can
I
ask Rose.
I cannot. Oh my!
And so he ended up getting Murabu, who didn't know the music right. And like, it was, Becky was like, what? He was also freaked out about it. We were all freaked out. Like, you can ask Faye, Paku.
I,
He was
I
like, everybody
cannot
was like,
believe this.
what? How come Kes is not? They were angry with me because they thought I double booked myself.
Right.
But that was because Damon was his name. Damon told him, no, I'm not available. So that was like probably the biggest disappointment of my life
Ah,
ever. But anyway, back to the thing. Then Becky kind of was the biggest influence of me moving forward because obviously his whole outlook on music.
mhm.
He's the guy that I remember I was listening to a lot of Tony Williams. I was
Okay.
Tony Williams crazy. And obviously he had analyzed everything that Marvin Smitty Smith had played on the thing. And
Mhm.
Marvin's also quite close to Tony
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
many ways, right?
Yeah.
And so, but Marvin's obviously got a lot of.
He's
I
got
mean,
his. Yeah.
Marvin's one of the gods of the drums. Let's not kid ourselves. I mean, he's like
Yeah.
another
No,
planet
he's
of.
out there.
Yeah, it's like almost too good, you know. But he also has perfect pitch and all of these things, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. He's legitimately a genius.
yeah, totally. And so I was obviously analyzing all that stuff, and I was listening to a lot of the complete concert
Mhm.
from Miles Davis. I was really getting into Tony, and I remember when I was trading eights or choruses with Baker, we were trading, and he would look back at me and say, "Stop doing Tony."
Oh.
I was like, "Wow." He said, "Stop thinking
Oh.
about Tony." I was like, "Wow." You know what I'm thinking? He says, yeah, I can hear what you play. No more Tony. And I said, he said, no, we need Alvin. And I said, Alvin
Okay.
Jones. And I said, yeah. He said, Alvin Jones is the closest to Africa,
Mm,
to African music of
mm,
all the
mm,
drummers. And I was like, yeah, I've been checking out Alvin, obviously,
mhm.
but I'm not sure I really get it
Yeah.
properly. And he says, "Don't worry, I'll show you the Alvin way of playing in terms of what he's thinking." And I was like, "Really?" He said,
Wow.
"Yeah, because they had played together many times." And so
Right.
I was like,
Right.
"Okay, tell me." So he showed me the Alvin ostinato,
Okay.
and I'm telling you that changed even the way I heard the music of when Alvin was playing with John Coltrane.
Mm,
That changed everything, and that changed the way I understood how jazz sounds and why I like those people, those
mm,
specific drummers, is because they had what was close to the African groove as possible.
mhm.
And that actually had to do with understanding the three and the four
Yeah.
on top of each other, also
Mhm.
understanding what's known as the secret groove or the secret pattern. But they
Okay.
also call it in Ghanaian music called the abakwa, which I
Mhm.
later on learned from Danilo Perez when I was studying
Okay.
with him.
Yeah.
But actually, it all ties in. And
Yeah.
so, and
Yeah.
so, Becky showed me the thing. He wasn't. He said Alvin doesn't play on the normal stang, stang, to dang, tang, to dang. He says that's
Mm,
not it. That's
mm-mm.
not the ostinato. That's just a pattern. That's
Yeah.
easy to kind of understand. He said the real pattern, actually, there's no one, right? Firstly.
Ah.
So the real pattern is like one, dang, 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 two, dang, 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 that's dang, dang, it's dang, dang, dang,
Mm.
dun, 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 it's like, dun, dun, dun. You listen to Tane, you listen to Alvin, you listen to that's what they play. They're not playing dang, 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 dang. It's just like one dang,
Right.
dang, dang, dun, dun, dun,
Ah.
so if you listen to when Becky swings and when McCoy Tyner is swinging and when they're all swinging, they're all thinking of da, 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 da. The phrases are like it, and then
Yeah.
the phrase accent is on the end of four
Yes.
and that becomes like the new one. So then it was
Uh-huh.
like it's like I'll give you a phrase, which was the whole phrase that Becky showed me, which was like dun, 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 ga, dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
dun, 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 1, 2, so that's where they would always that's what would
Uh,
always catch. And you see McCoy Tyne and them, they're catching all of that because
yeah.
you said
Yeah.
everybody in the band is thinking of that pattern and they're playing around that pattern. That's why when you hear this tune, Timelessness, the first phrase, or the second phrase is like
Yeah.
now that's an Alvin quote,
Wow. Wow.
so
Wow. 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 Wow.
and then also like all of a sudden because of Becky's time I spent with him, he would tell me the insight into the tunes. So if you listen to those tunes, you might not even understand what's going on there
Yeah.
because it's just the if you transcribe it, it won't make as much sense unless you understand the history of it. So
Right.
then I said to him like, okay, so we were playing obviously Angola, which was
Mhm.
everybody's big hit then.
Oh yeah.
And so I was like, I played it like Marvin played it, and Marvin
Right.
doesn't really know Cape Town music because
Yes.
he just played it the way he thought it. And obviously Becky said that the main pulse obviously on the 4 dun, 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 dun. So the 4 is the most important thing, but
Yeah.
the ride pattern's actually that Alvin ride pattern,
Yes.
right? But
Yes.
underneath, because that song is actually officially dedicated to Robbie Johnson, right?
I read that. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so Robbie Johnson is the main like influence for that tune. They also spent time in Angola.
In Angola. Yes.
So that's the reason why that came about. And so the tune is actually a guma.
Oh.
It's not a samba.
Yeah.
So the guma is actually like that. You know that. So that's actually all guma. Actually,
Wow.
So there's all kinds of layers, and then
Yeah.
and then on the top is like like almost like an Alvin groove
Right.
swinging
Right.
on top.
That's
So
beautiful, man.
so
So
then
like combining the guma with like the Alvin thing over the top. But
yeah, and the backbeat of like dance music.
yes.
And then this
That's
is where this is the most important lesson was that even if you were playing open jazz, Becky said this is the thing is that we all have to still play dance music.
Oh.
And so he was serious about the dance in the music. So even if you can hear there's some jazz where you hear like you can definitely feel everybody's playing open, but the groove is still there.
Still in it. Yeah.
And that's also because like and I guess when you don't feel it, it's because they're disregarding the African tradition in jazz. And this is what Becky was saying is like the tradition is rooted in dance music because especially in South Africa, the word for music and the word for dance is the same word. It's langoma, which means to dance, which also means to play music.
Yeah.
So there's no difference between music and dance.
And dance is the same. Yeah, because the two go. Yeah.
Yes, and so eventually, when we were playing, this is the most important lesson, I guess, was when we were playing Angola. We would play and get to the solo section, and then every person in the band, we would trade eights, whatever, but we wouldn't trade eights solo-wise. We would play the groove, and we would trade eights dancing.
Oh, that's hip.
Dance solos.
That's hip. Yeah.
So then, and so everybody was responsible for playing the groove,
right?
And then so it had to still groove enough for whoever's dancing to still be
to
dancing.
Get something. That is wow.
And we would do that, I was like, and then you must remember, I was like 19 at the time.
Oh my goodness!
So that was like, I mean, that was my whole life changed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I remember coming back to UCT, and I was just like, oh my goodness, what
What do you do now? Yeah.
what am I going to do now? I mean, all of a sudden, like, I had Andrew Lilly and everybody taking me out for lunch to ask me about the Becky tour. Like, I was like, oh, okay. They were fighting over taking me for lunch. I was like, oh, no, cool. And said,
Wow.
okay, what did Becky do? What was that? I was like,
Right.
okay. So the whole thing changed. And then obviously, after that, now, you must remember that then Becky was happy with me and he told everybody about Joburg, that's my drummer. He even said it on TV. He said it was quite hectic. It was quite hectic. I never forget this. It was on TV, and he said, there isn't, when he came back to South Africa, what have you found with the musicians? He says, there isn't any real jazz drummers in South Africa except Kesivan Naidoo.
Whoa.
And then all of a sudden, I was getting calls from everybody. Hey, Becky, I heard this from Becky. Faya called me. Some called me. You know, there were all these cats. I was like, what is going on? And so basically, that was the beginning of my career.
Yeah,
that was really when my South African career took off, and I ended up playing a lot of people's albums. Some Mawana's album, Fair Faku's record, Marcus Wyatt, all these guys. They all started calling me because Becky basically gave me the.
He gave you the thumbs up. That's incredible. That's so incredible.